Welcome to another episode in our series, Up to the Right. I'm Bill Gusmano, and for the past several decades, I've had the privilege of working with educators, trainers, learning designers all around the world, people who genuinely believe how we develop human capabilities matter. And right now, the belief is being tested in ways that we hadn't fully anticipated.
And I'm Frederick Cosney. I come at this from a slightly different angle, thinking about it from the perspective of sales, technology, and potentially adding a bit of elements around Asia Pacific. The question we keep running into is the same one that has been keeping trainers up at night for about a good couple of years now. What's my value when AI can answer almost any question in seconds?
That's exactly the right question. It's not a comfortable one for most trainers. And because for a long time, the trainer's primary role was to be that person in the room that knew things, who had the content, who could transfer knowledge. And AI has made that role, at least from a traditional form, largely obsolete.
That sounds very scary. And that's actually what we want to explore today. We want to think about how AI can be integrated in great training and help deliver great training. It's actually been really clarifying around what great training was always supposed to be.
Right. You look at the question that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and understandably so, because much of what trainers have traditionally done is that transfer of knowledge. They walk in with the content, they deliver it, and they transfer it to the room.
Very scary. The AI just does it for free and instantly.
It does. So we're not going to pretend otherwise, right? We can't overlook it. But here's what got us very excited when Fred and I would talk about this. When we're putting it all together, we don't think it's the end of the story for the trainers, nor did we ever. We actually think it forces really important clarification about what great training always was supposed to be.
And what we've realized is it's a lot less about transferring information and a lot more about building a different way to think about how we are driving engagement with customers, for example. How do we wrestle with hard problems? How to make judgments when there is no clean answer, in particular when we operate within complex environments.
That's what the next 30 minutes is about. So we're going to walk through 5 shifts we think every trainer and learning designer needs to sit with, starting with knowledge scarcity is basically gone, or access for the trainer, the access to it is infinite, and what it means for where they actually can deliver value and where does the trainer value actually live.
Actually, to get into what Rigor looks like when a chatbot can potentially handle recall questions. And we'll also think about what relevance means when your learner are going to be working with AI every day, not instead of working with it.
So we're using Dr. Bill Daggett's Rigor Relevance framework as our lens throughout the discussion, because honestly, it's one of the best tools we have for thinking about this. It's built for a different moment with a different audience, but it maps to this AI shift remarkably well.
And the big idea, what we keep coming back to, is actually quite simple. When knowledge is everywhere, when knowledge is infinite, Rigor helps become the differentiator. The trainer's job isn't to tell the information anymore. It's to help design thinking.
So let's get into it and have a discussion with Dr. Daggett. Bottom line is what I'm trying to impress upon the people that I work with is I think they're making some wrong decisions at the moment, right? That they're feeling that either it's a full AI choice or they have to figure out how to be more efficient in exactly what they're doing instead of actually rethinking what their approach is and really addressing what they've known probably for 10 plus years is that they're underperforming. You know, most of the learning and development organizations are really not they're not well aligned or engaged with the sales teams, and some of the sales teams and the marketing teams get really frustrated with some of the training aspects. And it's because what I believe especially after reading some of your publications, is that they're focused on the wrong things. They're really focused on providing more in-depth and maybe complex and difficult knowledge-based exams. And some of the more frequent was a conversation I had with an executive at an IT company, and what she was saying to me was she was getting really frustrated around the fact that she felt they were measuring the proficiency of their partner in their IT channel based on who watched the most YouTube certification videos, and that she really had no idea if they actually could do the work and drive some type of impact with their customers. So she was really frustrated with their partner program and how they measured successful partners or go-to partners. And I think that identifies and aligns very much with a lot of the work you did, and hence the reason I reached out to you. So with all of your work with, districts and systems, what you see happening with learning from a knowledge acquisition instead of really focusing on decision making, and maybe give me some background on how you got there.
Yeah, it became increasingly apparent, Bill, that if you don't use knowledge, you lose it. Now, remember, my focus is more in the education environment, not so much a private sector, but the lesson is the same. And I'll give you a good example. It's a major study out of Stanford University. Linda Darling-Hammond, one of the leading educational researchers in the country, headed this group that took the highest performing schools in the country and took their students, and when they took their final exams, their average grades were B+. Then 3 months later, they retested them on the exact same test, and the average grade fell to an F. And why did that happen? Because you really need to understand brain research. In the middle of the brain, there's something called the hippocampus. In the front of the brain is called the prefrontal cortex. And if you think in nature about a tree, the roots of the tree, if it becomes compromised, the trunk of the tree becomes compromised. Well, hippocampus is the roots of the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex is about long-term memory. It is about problem solving, decision making. It's about perseverance. And what we're finding is that unless you teach people deeply how to apply knowledge, and they begin to have to think deeply about it, not just recall it, but actually use it, you don't move the information from the hippocampus, which is where it starts, to the prefrontal cortex. It's a brain development issue. And Bill, it's gotten worse. It's gotten worse with not only kids, but adults, because in the technology age, we've learned to expect everything when. You Google something, if it takes 30 seconds, you would think the system had totally fallen apart. We want it now, 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 now. And what's happened is we're not moving our information from the hippocampus to the prefrontal cortex. Because of that, in K-12 education, some of the really big state testing programs are calling a halt to their testing programs. The two most comprehensive state testing programs in the country for decades have been the New York State Regents and the Massachusetts, they call them MCAS test. All knowledge-based. Both states are backing off of them and saying we're going to go to new types of assessments, which will require students to have portfolios and more authentic, comprehensive application of knowledge. I think you get the same thing in your business and industrial programs, Bill.
Yeah, we definitely see that. I think there's a stat that's out that 84% of the knowledge gained from training is gone with most of the sales reps within 90 days. So we're seeing that as well. And some of the questions I have is, so if we know this is happening, and what I'm wondering what you find is, if they know they're underperforming but they sort of double down and try and make the knowledge training or the exams all around knowledge even more complex or harder to complete. And they think that's going to drive an end result. And we've seen over time that it hasn't. So I wonder why many of these organizations are resistant to move to a new type of curriculum that does require more thinking instead of just memorizing and trying to retain that knowledge. What have you seen with resistance, or why they resist?
Can be multiple reasons, but the two underlying reasons are what I call the weight of the past and the pressure of the present. And what I mean by the weight of the past is that's how we've always done it. That's how we know how to do it. We just got to double down on what used to work. And pressure of the present, we got to get on with this quickly. Let's get on with this quickly. And you can cover materials in a training program exponentially quicker than you can put the person receiving the training through exercises and strategies and scenarios where they actually have to think much deeper and actually learn how to apply it.
Right.
And so it's that pressure of the present, get it done now, and it's that weight of the past. This is how we do it. It's hard for them to see a new paradigm, Bill.
Yeah, change is hard, right? And I also think that correlates to corporate America and organizations as well, because we'll see that pressure that they feel is they've got to make their number. They got to make it this month. They got to make it this quarter. And if they make a change, they're at risk of potentially not making it, right? So that whole fear of change and it not working, and also refocusing on the time aspect. I know our workshops that we like to put together typically are 2 days long instead of maybe a 2 to 4 hour training that they can get to transfer some type of knowledge. Like you said, you can do it quickly, you can cover a lot of ground, but to actually get into the thinking, the role plays, problem solving, it takes time. And many times they don't want to make the investment and take the salespeople out of the field at risk that it may not drive a particular or immediate result for the quarter, let's say.
Yeah, we call it the implementation dip. When you go to change, there's usually a short drop off before you have the exponential improvement.
Yep.
And everything is so short lived, we only look at the implementation, the dip, not the long term.
Yeah. So the other thing we're seeing, obviously more recently, is with this dramatic uptick in AI, a lot of organizations are debating two things, which is the value of training, since they aren't seeing the results they want. Should they try and leverage AI to deliver the training and get rid of some, or optimize, I should say, or drive some efficiencies in their training organization and how they deliver training, again, trying to make it even faster and more efficient? Or should they even change out the roles and have salespeople focused on something else, remove that from the process and maybe promote technical sales and a different focus for the customers? But we're seeing AI not only provide information as a tool, but actually change the roles of individuals. Do you see that in the education realm as well, that they're looking at AI to maybe change the roles of the educators?
Yeah, not replace the role.
Not
Okay?
replace.
Yeah, I do. We should see AI as our personal assistant. And the shift is this. Historically, whether it's in a classroom or if it's in a training program, the instructor provides instruction. I share information.
Right.
Well, the reality of it is AI actually probably can share that information faster, more efficiently, more personalized to each individual person, better than a classroom teacher. So what's the role of the teacher or the trainer? It's from providing instruction to managing learning with AI as a central tool. And I'm going to give you an analogy here. if you've had a physical with your doctor sometime in the last year, that doctor, when you went in for your annual physical, she or he probably spent more time looking at the computer and peppering you with questions than actually physically examining you. Now, why is that? It's because medicine has become an information technology industry as well. And at some time in your past, somebody in that doctor's office, either through a survey or actual interview, gathered a lot of information about you, your own health experiences, your lifestyle choices, your diet, your family history, and gathered all that information. And they did that because every doctor's office, every hospital in the country is one of four medical rec companies databases, where they have anywhere from 88 million to 220 million. When they gathered all that data, they tagged you to typically another 100 people most like you in terms of family history, your own medical history, your lifestyle changes. And they monitor what they're doing, almost like GPS does when you're driving a car. If you're driving a car and you go to GPS, tells you where to go, but sometimes it reroutes you. How does it know to reroute you? It's watching one of the cars, and on one of the roads you're going to go down, and if the algorithm says it's taking longer or shorter, they adjust. So what happens here in the medical records is they tag you to another 100 people, and every time you have a blood test or an MRI or anything else, your profile is constantly updated and then compared still to the most relevant 100 people. So if you come in and you got a problem, flip on and it will say, well, what pharmaceutical is most likely to work with this person? Or what are the medical issues I should be looking for in the annual physical and really adjusting? What blood test should I automatically order? What should we look at in the blood test? And so it's a data information. But if you're sick tomorrow morning and you go to your doctor, you don't see your doctor. You see a PA, nurse practitioner. If you're really sick, you go to a specialist. Okay? So what did it do? It changed the role of family doctor forever, from providing patient care to managing patient care.
Mm-hmm.
And technology is central to that, and AI is accelerating that exponentially. I have a daughter and son-in-law in the medical field. That is the same thing that's happening with education and training programs, from providing instruction to managing learning. That is a fundamental shift, Bill.
Yeah, that's a huge shift.
Yeah, and those trainers need to desperately be retrained. And some of them who are really good at providing instruction aren't so good at it.
Right, right.
Okay, and some who don't have deep content knowledge and therefore weren't good trainers in the old system actually are more effective in this system.
That's right.
And so, Bill, do we have the right people in the right seats on the bus?
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. There's a direct correlation. I worked with an IT company a long time, and as technology evolved, and even from a technology perspective, more tasks got automated. So you didn't need as many frontline workers from an IT perspective. But they said, so what happens to your infrastructure? And you are an orchestrator of that infrastructure, because there's other tasks that can be automated and access to information, and you can drive efficiencies. It's a very systematic process, what we're talking about, that can be applied. And I think it's just an evolution of intelligent automation. So it's really fantastic. And that manager of education can be very powerful, making sure that you can personalize the learning path that individuals can go through. So you can really customize and personalize learning with some of these tools, which is fantastic. Some other questions about the work that you've done from a practical perspective. If they're moving to managing the learning environment and maybe learning paths and helping individuals to grow and be more effective sooner, what are some of the next steps that you see the organizations need to make to actually implement that strategy? What changes are they going to have to make? I know you alluded to, do we have the right people for the right roles, but maybe just the outlining what you see as the next steps that they may need to take.
It all begins with understanding the problem. And do the ultimate decision makers who make the decisions about what the training programs are going to be, do they understand, Bill, what we just talked about? And then you can't go faster than the rate of readiness and trust. Do both the instructors and the students understand why the change is needed? We're all comfortable to the old industrial model. That cuts right into education and training too. That's how we did it in the past. And so it's hard for them to visualize something different. So awareness on the decision makers of why change is needed in how we organize and deliver training and education. Step one. Step two, then create a deeper understanding with the providers of it, because you can't go faster than they're ready to let you go. And then, Bill, I think the third thing is you have to begin to develop some videos of what it really looks like. You know, you hear pictures worth 1,000 words, a video's worth 10,000 words.
Okay.
And if you got a video, what does that type of training look like? How is it different from what we're now doing? Because I find people actually have a hard time visualizing it. But if you create an understanding, we need to do it, create a readiness and trust to say, yeah, let's get on with it, and then show people how to do it, it will work. If you don't do those three things, I actually don't think you can change the system.
Yeah. That's very interesting. We designed a workshop in which we had a mix of very senior and very successful people in their role over time, all the way from basic new hires that had been in the role probably less than 3 months, and there was a spectrum across the entire piece and our attendees. So we decided to have the first activity was to have them do a sales presentation to any customer that they chose and to record it on their phone. And across the board, the presentations were relatively poor. As we took them through the workshop, teaching them and running role plays, giving some content, and then having them apply it to their particular account to improve their presentation. And we would teach things like financial acumen, business type outcomes, value propositions, research and understanding personality types. There's a curriculum for the 2 days, but we would stop and have them re-record their presentation as they gained that information and practice their role plays. And over the 2-day period, we had a final presentation. And everyone, as they got to see their presentation evolve at the end, there was 100% change in the room from the beginning presentation to the end presentation, leveraging some of the knowledge we gave them, but they were able to apply it in a specific customer situation. And you could also see the change in effectiveness of the outcome being delivered in a much more effective, valuable, client-engaged presentation. And they were very resistant in the beginning to want to join the training. And afterwards, we had 100% recommendation for their peers to sign up for our class. So I think you're right. When you can actually see the changes, and their sales management team got to come in and witness some of the progression in the different presentations, that's when they said, hey, this is a better way and more effective training program than we've had in the past. I think we could practice it. Now it's about probably broadcasting that and demonstrating the measurements, because there's a risk for change that people are resistant to because they're afraid of what if it doesn't work and how does that impact their immediate goals. The next question I have for you is, so what do you think the risk is if your school districts and the corporate environment that I deal with don't make this change? What is the risk of what might happen?
Well, Bill, let me give you some analogies and maybe it will become clear.
Okay.
I don't think any of the listeners would disagree with this. AI is changing the workplace, home, and society, whether we like it or not. It's
Yep.
having a profound impact. What happened to organizations, Bill, that didn't respond to the changing technologies? What happens is other organizations figured out how to do it. Do you ever have a Kodak camera?
Yes.
Got one today? Yeah.
That's a different question. Yeah, nostalgic.
Yeah.
So the answer is
Yeah.
yes, but yeah, it's not in use.
Yeah. Still got a BlackBerry?
Oh, no,
Yeah.
that's
Did
right.
you ever go to Blockbusters?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in the 1990s, who owned the computer industry? IBM.
Right.
Got an IBM?
Right. Yep.
AI is so pervasive. It's impacting every industry out there. It's really gone through three of the five stages we're going to see here in a relatively short period of time. Stage one was generative AI. It's been around forever, i.e. Google. Okay,
Hmm.
Alexa, sorry. And then we jumped when OpenAI created ChatGPT to stage two, and people began to use it. And the difference between stage one and stage one, it just found information. Stage two, it can create new information for you. This is also true in training.
Right.
Stage three added video and audio and graphics. And that's the stage. Most organizations still in stage two, but stage three is clearly here. Stage four over the next year. And if you go to Google's DeepMind, which is probably the pace setter group here, and understand where it's going to move to a substructure like the internet and electricity is. It's going to underpin virtually everything. And then stage five, and it's going to underpin everything because all these chips, computer chip companies, AI is being
Yes.
embedded in them. It's going to be
Yep.
everywhere, communicating all over about everything. And it's going to create more information faster, quicker than any of us can. And I use all those examples because when it comes to education and training, if we don't integrate it in any one program, other places are going to figure out how to do it and they're going to replace you. And if you don't keep up with it, your company's going to be in trouble because education and training has absolutely never been more important than it is today because of that fundamental shift. And cutting edge companies are recognizing, hey, we could become the next Kodak. We could become the next, BlackBerry, the next IBM. And the centerpiece of changing is going to be your education training program.
Hmm.
But you're going to have to use that technology in the process, not to replace the trainer. But as we said earlier, to change their role from simply providing the information to really teaching people how to use that information in highly effective ways.
That leads to a great point. Maybe you could go into more depth when you created the Rigor Relevance framework to really allow people to better understand the difference between rigor and relevance and why the maximizing both is so important.
Yeah, first of all, and that really requires me, Bill, to define what rigor is. Most people think rigor just means harder. Okay, make it harder. In schools, that would be a harder worksheets, AP courses, higher level reading levels in books, more homework. That's not what rigor is. Rigor is really about scaffolding information. Now, you're still going to have basic information. You can't apply knowledge that you don't know. But what we've got to be able to do is take what we know in math, and when we go to science, scaffold that up. And then when we go to the next engineering course, scaffold it up. So you're building the knowledge one on top of the other. Rigor means the scaffolding of multiple disciplines in an integrated way in our head. But our education system doesn't teach that way because first period's got nothing to do with second period. Math has got nothing to do with science, and so on. Okay, so the rigor is that, and it takes you from knowledge all the way up to beginning of application, to design, creativity, higher levels, all
Yep.
which require that. So that's rigor. Relevance, on the other end, there's kind of 5 levels to it. The first level is basic knowledge, just like it is on the rigor side. So the core of rigor and relevance is the same. I call it quad A, is basic knowledge. Unfortunately, Bill, that's what too many training programs are. They end at A.
Right.
But I want to emphasize A is still essential. Moving up the rigor relevance scale, then you not only have it, but you can apply it to a real world predictable problem.
Yep.
The key word here is predictable. So I can apply it to a task I got to do that is predictable. But when you begin to go up, it moves it from having the knowledge to applying it not only as an individual, but as a member of a team.
Okay.
And then the highest level is applying that knowledge to a real world unpredictable problem. As recently as 2 years ago, just getting them up to the application to a real world predictable problem was high enough. But because of AI, if you can write an algorithm for any task, AI can do it faster, more efficiently than any human being. It can do all the predictable. What AI can't do is the unpredictable. And so if you think of this little framework, what we've got to do is have, and that's what we mean by rigor and relevance, real world, unpredictable problems, working as a member of a team at a design and creativity level.
Yeah. In my mind, I have so many visuals because some of the issues across corporations, granted, in complex sales environments, which could be anything from pharmaceuticals to technology, but typically we see it in technology. But in a complex sales environment, they talk about having 6-legged and 8-legged sales calls, which means the salesperson knows, because they've been in these meetings a number of times, they're going to run in, they can prepare all they like and they can meet with the pre-sales, but they're going to be in a situation that they can't predict. Someone's going to ask a question or throw something at. So what they do is they gather the technical salesperson, the manager, and executive, anybody they can, to hopefully fend off and be able to answer those questions, because they're so concerned about not looking credible or being called out and not knowing something. Which, by the way, I feel once you get to the highest level of rigor and relevance, you're actually very comfortable in an unpredictable situation to say, I don't know, but I can figure it out. Or here's what I believe might be, and I need to do more research. So there's so many scenarios when you talk about that from an education standpoint that directly correlate to the corporate environment and how we interact with our clients and engage. It's really amazing. So the key, I think, also is, I think it's very, you talked about incorporating AI into the process, and it's not either or. I think there's scenarios along the rigor relevance in which AI is a great support tool, or even automating many processes to streamline the engagement in that client engagement. But the key is, as you said, doubling down, and really it's become so much more important from a training perspective to focus on that critical thinking, so you don't have 8-legged sales calls, and you can have salespeople in unpredictable, ambiguous situations. I think the other point you made is convincing the organization at the highest levels that that is necessary, because as engineers, they're designing materials and hoping for predictable results and implementations. But as customers often know, that almost never happens, right? There's
Yeah.
always something that they're not going to know. And that's why they push in these client meetings to answer unanswerable questions or things that haven't happened before, which is all about trust. I know you mentioned trust. I think it's a very large factor. And I told you we had a discussion with Charles Green, who developed the trust equation, because as AI and these things evolve, developing trust, I think the critical thinking and problem solving for people in the team, internally and externally, that also focuses much on trust, right? And it helps to develop trust as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we touched on just about everything that I wanted to talk about. The one other that I think might be interesting, though, is the reason why I really am excited about having these conversations with you. Not only do I have some young adults going through the education system and about to be the young workforce, but I work with the young workforce all the time. And having the students themselves and the new people into the workforce recognize that they shouldn't default to the AI tools and allow them to make decisions for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big risk because, again, the education system and even corporate training seem to be okay or even defaulting to AI making the decisions. They're not pushing necessarily these young employees to think critically and solve problems. Certain
Yeah.
organizations are, maybe the consultings, the McKinseys, and certain organizations are, but many aren't. And that scares me and makes me a bit nervous and concerned, because I have a stake in the game, as we all do as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. I share the observation you just make. I would agree with you, Bill. But that goes for our educators, it goes back to that paradigm shift, and that's why I talk about the weight of the past.
Mm-hmm.
If not now, I'm just talking about our school system, but if you think
Yeah.
about schools, the vast majority of educators liked school when they were kids. And
Mm-hmm.
so they went to college to major in school so that when they graduate from college, they could return to school to do to others what had been done to them. And they
Mm-hmm.
interact with a cohort of people who think just like they do. And it makes it almost impossible for them to conceptualize, why do we need to do things differently, or how do you even do things differently? That's why when I talked about the videos, they become really important. I find even the most resilient people, when you see some of these videos, they say, wow, that's an exciting classroom. Wow, those kids are really engaged. Uh,
Right.
and increasingly, today's kids are less and less engaged in school. Attendance is down, participation in class is down, absenteeism is way up. Today's kids are not connecting up with our 20th century delivery system.
Yep. And it puts us at risk. The corporate environment should worry just as much about this, because they are their future employees, right? And that's what's going to drive the workforce. The other piece that I'm stating as a risk to these organizations, if they default to allowing AI to make decisions with their engagements and not push for the human element around critical thinking and problem solving and innovating, they run the risk of not differentiating, because those same tools are available to their customers, their competitors, and others. And you're allowing the AI tools to differentiate on your behalf.
You're right. How do you differentiate where you're better than the next guy if all you're using is AI and they're using AI?
What's the difference?
Who's going to get it is who's ever cheapest then.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we dealt with this when we came out with the internet and online stores came on. Everything was supposed to then be done in an online exchange. And granted, as we see things change, Amazon, other online entities, yes, buying has changed, but it's not eliminated. So I think we need to understand the role of AI and where the benefits are and where we run a risk.
Yeah, Bill, there's one other piece of information that it's not really directly related to what we're talking about today, but I think it's important for where you sit.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've heard this, me talk about this, so uh, give me 5 minutes to share it with you because it may be relevant.
That'd be great.
We have a labor shortage today. Virtually every business out there has got a help wanted sign out. Doesn't matter where you go in the country.
Hmm.
But at the exact same time, recent college graduates are having a hard time finding work. Now, why is that? And the reason is what automation did to manual workers in the 20th century. It did the most basic of tasks, wiped out the entry-level manual jobs, a lot of them. Technology did it. What AI is doing at an incredibly rapid rate is wiping out the lower level knowledge jobs and tasks. But the upper level tasks are actually now more important than ever before because you've got to understand the lower level ones, even if you're not personally doing them. You've got to
Hmm.
understand them if you're going to be able to write the prompt and be the sophisticated editor, AI editor, or whatever happens with technology. So keep that in mind together with this is that business and industry is going to be moving to AI at an accelerating rate, and I'm afraid without deeply thought through long-term policy implications because of this labor shortage, which is only going to get worse. And there's nothing is going to prevent it from getting worse for this reason. In 1960 in the United States, 39% of the US population was under the age of 19. It was because of the baby boomers.
Right.
And therefore, the nation created the community college system. Didn't exist till the early 60s. You had a place for all these kids to go. And schools began to build more K-12 school buildings. 39% was under the age of 19, and 13% was above the age of 65. So there were three young people who potentially could be entering the workplace for everyone leaving. But those baby boomers began to retire recently and now at an accelerating rate. At the exact same time, we have a declining birth rate in this country. If you want to have zero-based growth in a nation, you need to have, on average, 2.1 births for every adult woman. We are at 1.6. And so by 2035, there will be more people in this country over 65 than under 19. And if you've ever had to care for an elderly parent, those over 65 require enormous labor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
our labor is going to become a real problem. And business and industry is going to look and say, I got to find other ways. I got to find ways to replace the worker rather than thinking more deeply about the fact, no, I've got to figure out how to restructure my workforce, making every employee as productive as possible with AI in effect being their assistant. That's the direction I see the country headed.
Yeah. I agree. And I think it's being promoted, right? With Mr. Musk and others, the tech innovators, their prediction is to automate even at a faster rate, right? To address this issue, I believe, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something to consider because the positions that will be open and that will be required will be to think critically, solve problems, and manage all of this automation and technology that will be out there to drive efficiencies, right? If we don't have the individuals coming into the workforce with those skill sets and capabilities, I fear we're going to be in quite a dilemma.
Yeah. And that's why when I talked about that Rigor and Relevance framework, getting up to that real world unpredictable problem situation, AI can do the predictable. It does not do the unpredictable.
That's right. And if you ask AI, it says it never will.
Yeah. What it can is based upon an algorithm. When you got an algorithm, it means it's predictable.
That's right.
Well, I hope this is helpful.
This is great. This is really fantastic. We have stuff to to work with, and I'll share it with you. Just to share with you, just so you know, we actually use some AI tools that we're developing in small language models in conjunction with some large ones. And one thing we started to do was, how do we automate assessments and learning path recommendations based upon the Rigor Relevance framework? We started messing with that a couple weeks ago. And I'd love to share some results because it's pretty evident. So we take a curriculum that we're deploying or that's required. So there's competencies that most of the large organizations will have by role. So they'll say a salesperson in government or enterprise needs to have these 20 competencies. So we take those competencies and we map those competencies to some of the curriculum that we put out. And then we started to add your Rigor Relevance framework and say, okay, what courses deliver along that assessment and which competencies map to rigor and relevance? And then based upon your self-assessment or your manager's assessment on where you lie, what is the recommended learning path of courses to move up and to the right? And we're talking about having our initiative up and to the right, because that's where everybody wants to go, right? Whether it's revenue growth, whether it's moving to quadrant D, whether it's anything, you want to move up and to the right. So that's what we're thinking about. Just wanted to share that with you.
That's great. Good. Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
I'll reach back out to you. I'll via email, and if we can ever, if I can ever be of assistance to you, I greatly appreciate this. And I really enjoy the conversations, by the way, a great deal. So thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Bill. Have a good
All right.
week. Yeah.
Bye, Dr. Thank you.